Hello and welcome to the Honest Hour podcast, the show that encourages you to lead with curiosity and question everything. I'm your host, Janae, and each week we'll dive into topics that many shy away from. If any of this interests you, make sure to follow so you don't miss when I drop a new episode. So get comfy while we get curious.
A rich man's world. I have turned the soul of this
So today we are going to get into it. We are going to be talking about what the young kids call daddy issues. I feel like there should be a cue in there for like, woo, yay, because this is exciting. It's exciting to tap into this topic because for me, it means I've reached a point in my healing journey where I can talk about it and not let it affect me the way that it used to, which progress, okay? Progress. And it took a long journey to get here. So if you were still on your journey, and also side note, I'm still on my journey. Again, we talk about there not being an end to the healing cycle. It's continuous, and I will continue to do this work. So if you were on the journey, but maybe finding yourself to be more triggered or more reactive, then this is for you. And honestly, it's for all the people out there that did not grow up in a two-parent home because I did not, okay? And I would go to my friend's house and, just kind of see the life that they live and how it differed than from me living in a single parent home. And y'all, if y'all listen to the Mother's Day episode, you know how much I value and respect my mother for all that she has and continues to do. So this is not to, say anything's wrong with growing up with a single parent at all. This is to acknowledge the fact that we have a different experience than those who grew up in a two-parent home. So, I'm sure for many that looked a certain way. And there's so many different meanings to it. Maybe your father just was not involved, not in your life. Maybe, your father's deceased. Maybe you have a stepdad in the home, but, the connection with your birth father just maybe you never met him. I don't know. There's so many different stories out there, and I hope that whatever story you have, that you resonate with something in this episode today. So, what did that look like? If you take a second and think back to your childhood and the ways in which your father was not present, how did that show up for you? In what ways did you need your father to play this role for you that he did not? Now, don't get me wrong. Your father doesn't have to be absent for this to still be real and true for you. You could have grown up in a two-parent household and still experienced a distant father. Or maybe you all didn't have that strong relationship or connection that you wish you did have. A connection that, was similar to the ones you saw with your friends. And someone just said this to me that they remembered um, They remembered going to their friend's home when they were younger, and they got emotional, and they realized they were so emotional because it seemed like that friend had a stable upbringing because they had their parents in the home. And also, they were loving and supportive and caring. And when you don't experience that, you yearn for it, you grieve over it. And again, it is not pretty, it is not fun. And for a long time, I would not bring up my dad at all. People would talk to me, I'd be in conversations, and it was always mom, mom, mom. My mom's side of the family, because that's how I grew up. That's what I knew. I was around her family way much more than I was around my dad's family. And my experience, so my dad wanted to be in my life, but when I did give him the opportunity to be in my life, he would uh, prove to me over and over why I chose to create that boundary and why I did not want him in my life. At a young age, I learned people pleasing behaviors because of the type of environment he created for me. Now, I'm telling this story in today, present day, and I've chosen to, I suppose, forgive that man. We're here, and we have a relationship, and I've never, I think this is probably the most consistent and positive we've been interacting. And I'm 26, about to be 27. It is strange. Okay, so I I'm able to kind of go back to the past and tell this story. And he would say, because he loves to say that I'm like dissecting or analyzing him, but it's truly not that. For me, when I walk down memory lane, it's number one to get a better understand as to why I feel what I feel right now in this moment. And for me, when I'm confronted with any sort of, you know, thing. So, for example, like Father's Day, at the time of recording this right now, Father's Day is tomorrow. And I was telling my boss, so I work at this boutique, and she sells, like, obviously Father's Day stuff, and eh, you are the number one dad. I would be lying. I would be fooling myself, and I would be fooling him. So I'm like, yeah, I don't know why they don't make like okay dad stuff, like you were an okay dad. And that's the truth. And it may not sound great. He may not like hearing that sometimes, but it's my truth. So our relationship, growing up, it was so interesting because within my young adulthood, my relationships paralleled the relationship that I had with my father. And as much as my mom instilled in me, you don't need a man, you find that love within yourself. I subconsciously was attracting these men that were not emotionally available and continued to create a toxic environment by coming in and out of my life, which is exactly what my father did. So again, he wanted to have a relationship with me. I just don't think he knew how. it's not that I don't think, he did not know how to. And of course, in my adulthood, I found out that he didn't have his father in his life. He had a very rough upbringing, and it was all about survival for him. So again, when I seek to understand, it's not to give an excuse, but it helps me view the situation from all the different perspectives. And my truth is still valid. And also I'm adding more information in to again better understand. So you have this man, so right now he's like 60 years old. That man is old. You have this man that as a child, as a young boy, did not have someone to show him how to be a man. So when he was growing up, he just had to do what he had to do. And he basically was winging it, which, I understand to some extent. Parents, you wing it. Like no one ever really has everything figured out. We're all just winging it as adults, right? Not even just parents, but adulthood. Like no one knows what's going on. But when you don't have that guidance, when you don't have someone in your life, especially a parent, the people that are meant to guide you, or even, role models or people you can look up to that are showing you something different than what you're used to, you create or you continue these negative cycles. So you have that little boy that grows up to be a man that is continuing these cycles and passing it down generation through generation. Because I'm not the only one. He's a couple other children, okay? And I remember, when I was growing up, he was always talking to people, to his children, then not talking to them, then like it was always something, right? And it's like, wh- what is the common denominator here? Like, sir. So, as I was saying, from my perspective, growing up, what I saw from my dad was completely different from what I saw from my mother. So my mother, very churchy, she tries to live as best as she can, according to the Bible, okay? And my dad, he's not religious. Yeah, they're polar opposites. I listen, still to this day, I'd be like, girl, what? Really? What? Because how? But that's not what we're here to discuss. So, polar opposites, and just the type of environment that I grew up in with my mom, again, she was so supportive, so loving, and just, we all say we have the best moms in the world, but I truly think my mom was best for me. And oh, not me getting emotional. But she was what I always needed, even when I didn't always know that myself. And without her, my life would have turned out so much more worse. Not to say that it's terrible, but just in terms of, the relational aspect, because again, I was attracting these partners and these toxic relationships and continuing this cycle. And it's interesting because the type of environment that I was in was very loving and supporting and encouraging and all those things. And also, what I was trying to refer to a couple episodes, the nature versus nurture. Okay, because the environment was ideal, but then you add in the nurture piece, right? Genetically, what was being passed down and what was my body, my mind, what was I already assuming and I guess kind of like manifesting, you know? And it's really interesting when you think about it from this way because it was like as much as I tried or wanted better, I was still attracting the same thing. So for me, that inconsistency, the relationship that I have with my dad, the inconsistency again was a parallel for me in my intimate relationships. And as I got older, I knew that I needed to cut ties with him in order to protect myself. That me not speaking to him was my boundary. And again, I needed to do that in order to heal the the anger and the resentment and just sadness. I was angry at him. I resented him, of course, and I was sad. I remember thinking to myself a few years ago, like I'm watching people on social media. They're getting married and they're having these beautiful moments with their fathers, walking them down the aisle. And I said to myself, I'm like, I'm not gonna have that. And that is freaking sad. And that that was the thing that really got to me because for so long I was not sad. I was more so the resentment was at the front door, I guess, for me. That was the very first emotion that I was feeling. And everything else kind of came behind it. But in that moment, I was like, damn, like, it sucks that I don't have this. And a part of me wishes that I did. And also, there's nothing I can do to change it. And it can be so challenging to create boundaries with a parent. Because so on my mom's side, she's like, you know, I think you should talk to your dad. I think you should do this. And I'm like, Ma, no, no, I don't want to talk to that man. I don't want to see that man. I don't want nothing to do with that man. And she's like, now when I tell her, like, oh, I'm going to spend time with him, she's like, oh, that's so great. Okay. But for her, she was always like, it's great for you to have a relationship with your father. And I couldn't at the time. I could not. It was too triggering for me to remain in contact and to constantly be reminded of the ways in which he treated me when I was younger. Around him, my nervous system just did not feel safe. I was always on edge. And I say now that okay, we have this relationship, but I found myself getting triggered not too long ago. We had went it was my very first time taking a trip with him. We went to visit my sister because it was my nephew's graduation and or going on ceremony. And he we were in the car one day and someone called him and it was a situation that upset him and he starts screaming in the car. And it's me and my other nephew in the car. And my dad was driving at the time. And I be getting car sick, honey. I'm in the back seat and his anger, for me, it was at like a 7 out of 10. Maybe that's, I don't know, that's my perception. He could say different. Who knows? But I'm like, okay, you're driving us and you're at a level that is doesn't feel safe to me. And I had even offered to drive and he's like he said some comment back to me that I was just like, okay, whatever. But In that moment, just him raising his voice brought me back. I'm like, "Oh, this is why I take my space. This is why I can't be around you for too long. This is why I cut ties from you because at your core, you're still him. You're still that person." And I remember we got home and I just needed to be as far away from him as possible. I went upstairs and I was just like, yeah, I need time to process. And I don't know if it was later that night. Oh, I think, yeah, later that night, he, so what he explained to me later on, we were able to talk about it later, but he tried to put his arm around me and I literally, bro, I reacted so fast to that man. I'm like, no, like, no, that's not what we're doing. I said something like that. And later, I did feel a little bad because in that moment, I knew that I was reacting from the part of me that was still scarred from him and not the me that is choosing to forgive and meet him where he is and allow, like, no matter how that shows up, leaving that where that is and being able to, I'm trying to figure out how to word this, but show up as far as I want to show up. And to me, that brought me out of my character. And I didn't like the way that I handled the situation. And later when we discussed it, he, of course, just didn't make the connection that I responded that way due to what happened in the car. And he has said to me, he was like, "You know what?" I said, "I'm just gonna leave her alone." And, you know, that's that. And I felt bad. I really did because I know that he is trying. He is trying. And I think it's even more challenging when, someone that has caused a lot of pain in your life is turning, over a new leaf and you're figuring out where you want to, how, wow. Yeah, this is hard. It's challenging because you want to create and, set these boundaries for yourself to protect yourself and maintain them. And you don't want to be governed by the past and the pain, and you want to view this person for how they're showing up today, but it's so hard when there's so many layers to the pain to look at someone and to not see all the things that transpired. And I will say I'm proud of myself for continuing to maintain this relationship in adulthood. And also, I'm here to say that it is not easy. It is not easy to walk down the path of forgiveness when you've been scarred so deeply. And, I feel as though I forgive to an extent. I don't know what full forgiveness looks like because they say, you can forgive, but you don't forget. But What's the difference? How do you know you've truly forgiven someone for the things they've done? Because for me, when I was triggered and brought back to that place, I don't think I've truly let it go if if I can allow that to happen. If I can allow this person to bring me back to that place. And it took a second, a split second to feel like that little girl again. And it's just it's challenging. It's challenging when you see people and they have these beautiful relationships with their parents, and a part of you yearns for that, and also a part of you, me personally, I feel as though I've accepted the place where I've gotten with my father, that I don't know how far it'll go, but I'm damn sure I'm so proud of myself for just opening that door, because for me opening that door means that I'm trying to close another. And again, for me, I will never forget. And if this is what forgiveness looks like for me, then this is what it looks like. I don't know what it'll look like for you. I'm, sharing my story and my experience, but of course, things look different from person to person. And if you if your story sounds like mine, or if there are some similarities, and for you right now it feels right to cut ties, that's okay. It's okay to choose yourself. It's okay to not allow that pain to rule over you. It's okay to choose that you are now in control. It's okay to learn how to trust yourself again, to trust others again. And it's okay if you want to work on that relationship to whatever feels right for you. And at any point, it is still your choice to step back, to check in with yourself and figure out, okay, do I want to continue to maintain this relationship? Am I ready for this? Do I need more time? And if the answer is you'll never be ready, that's okay. I know this got deep, guys. I didn't know what was gonna come up, but I appreciate you all rocking with me throughout this challenging episode. If you're hearing this, that means you've listened to the entire episode. And for that, I want to thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends or leave a review wherever you're listening. To stay updated with the Honest Hour podcast, you can follow me on Instagram at The Honesty Pod. And if there are specific topics you want me to cover in future episodes, please let me know. Thank you again, and I hope to see you back here next week.
A rich man's world.